But you can always reach out to anybody you want to, I think. And in walks Guy Kawasaki, the famous author who's now a great friend, and he comes and sits at my table and says, "Show me what you've got." What was so bizarre is that I used Guy's pitch deck advice and his 10 slides to success to raise the money for Brndstr. Luck has a lot to play. I do believe luck has a lot to play, but I'm a believer that the energies you put into the world, you get those back.
Absolutely.
The key thing for me has always just been to never give up. People come into your life for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. And anybody you meet will fall into one of those three categories.
Welcome back to The Change Officer, mind-opening show where we introduce you to the brilliant humans who are shaping the business landscape of the Middle East. Today, I have a chance to host a guy who doesn't take no for an answer. Starting off in London in 2008, he was on the founding team of Street Life, a British social networking website that linked users together based on their neighborhood. He sold his shares and moved to Dubai to join Groupon, where he was responsible for some of the great innovations at that time. He turned out to be very successful in recognizing opportunities that the market offers. That's how he founded Brndstr, a platform that allows brands to engage with the audience on a deeper level. Brndstr grew rapidly and soon started generating millions of dollars in revenue. But when Facebook closed some of the APIs essential for the business, everything has changed overnight. His business collapsed and he was forced to shut it down. However, he refused to give up, packed his suitcases and went back to the States to look for a new opportunity. He met a guy who introduced him to the creme-de-la-creme of Silicon Valley, who are now sitting on the board of his new venture, Cheeze. Thousands of people are already on the waiting list for a new app that he is building together with none other than Guy Kawasaki. In a matter of days, they will introduce an app that revolutionized the way how we share megapixel photos. These are just tiny bits of his incredible journey, and we are about to dig deeper. He writes for Entrepreneur, he mentors other startups, serial entrepreneur and the founder of Cheeze. My guest today, Simon Hudson. Welcome to The Change Officer, Simon.
Nice to meet you.
It's good to have you here, man.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time.
I've been looking forward to this conversation from the moment we had that intro chat and we met.
Yeah.
Thanks to Lara for putting us in touch.
Yeah, thank you, Lara.
You are one of the few people that I met, if not the only one, that had that real Silicon Valley story of going out there, raising capital, building the startup, and really the whole conversation left me in like, wow.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool story. It's been an interesting time, and I think the DNA of being an entrepreneur is in my blood. So you kind of just do what you have to make a success, I guess.
Yeah, we'll be talking about a couple of things today. Obviously, a bit more about your journey, more about entrepreneurship, startups, Silicon Valley versus Dubai. Why don't we start by you just sharing with us a bit more about what are you currently working on?
So I'm currently heading up a company called Cheeze. It is a platform that is helping people to manage and share photos in private. We actually launched the company about 2 years ago. It goes back a long way, to be totally honest. I had a company prior to Cheeze, which was called Brndstr, and out of that we spun a project out, which was called Cheeze, and then that actually ended up becoming what I'm working on. So Cheeze is at the moment is a product that is helping people to share and manage photos. We launched a pilot called Privy Chat about 18 months ago. And the idea of that was to really look and see what the users wanted, look to see what they were needing, looking to kind of really deep dive into the data and see what would stick and what wouldn't. Obviously lockdown happened and the whole COVID thing came, so that changed a little bit of our roadmap. But yeah, we're currently working on a really cool product. It's going to be able to help you manage and share photos. We're integrating digital wallets for NFTs and digital art. So that's a super exciting space right now. I'm really enjoying getting to know people, understanding what that looks like. And yeah, hopefully all going well in the next couple of months, we'll be releasing the first version and people will be able to manage their photos, send them, mint them, put them on the blockchain. And just a whole new world of photography, to be honest. It's pretty exciting. I'm enjoying it.
That sounds exciting. Okay, you mentioned now, and I introduced you as a founder of Brndstr, and then Privy Chat, and then Cheeze, and each of these startups, companies
have their own stories, and like that we can spend
that's
probably a series of episodes about each one.
Yeah, that's true.
But like, you make it sound kind of easy serial entrepreneurship, couple of startups, etc. But you don't just wake up one day with a groundbreaking idea. Like, how does it happen, man?
To be totally honest, and anybody that will know me will know that I just always talk about ideas and have done for a very, very long time. The key thing for me has always just been to never give up. I think that my journey starts back in 2007 when I joined a couple of friends and we were building a product called Street Life back in London, which was designed to be a Facebook for your house. We went through the whole fundraising. I learned a ton, made a load of mistakes. Obviously, it was a long time ago now. But what I realized is that I love the whole idea of entrepreneurship and business. So, for me, it's a passion, a business and a hobby. And I just think that the key thing is that I just don't give up on the product or the business or the idea. Brndstr was an amazing company, best years of my life, to be honest. It was a fantastic time. We started in 2013. We unfortunately closed the business in 2018 after the whole Cambridge Analytica problems that happened. But out of that was an opportunity that we saw. We packaged up the assets from that business and then spun out another company which became Cheeze. And again, people looked at me and said, "What are you doing? Like you've just been doing this for 5 years. Why would you start another one?" But I don't know. It's about meeting. I'm meeting you now because of the fact of the industry that I'm in, and that's just happened time and time again. So I wouldn't say it's coming up with an idea and then actually, knowing what to do. I just think it's kind of just life. You just wake up and just keep going, I guess.
There's a lot of people coming up with the ideas, right?
Yeah.
But there is a big difference between coming with the idea and actually executing. And I think that's where you are making a difference, right?
I think it's true. I think that, I'll be honest, I get a lot of people messaging me about their friends, husbands, wives. They've got an idea. Would you mind just taking some time to have a coffee? And I say the same thing every time. I am no different to anybody else who's got a company, and nobody, who has started a business would ever look back and be like, "Oh, there's a magic sauce, there's a rule book." I think the key is that you've just got to kind of start. I think that's the hardest thing. It's like going to the gym. I would love to be a toned guy. I just don't have that ability to just start the gym. If I do, I don't stick at it. But business is different, and that's my passion. So I think the hardest thing is starting. Once you've started, it's then just about taking the punches and just keep going until you figure out what you want to do.
So if I'm not mistaken, you started your entrepreneurship career or journey in 2008, something like
yeah. To be honest, if I think back or talk to my parents, I was selling kind of all sorts at a young age. From the age of 13, 14, I was told when I wanted a paper round, they said to me, "No, there's no paper round." And I asked them and go, "How can I start one?" They said, "You need 15 houses to start a new round." So I found 15 houses and started a new paper round. And I think it's always been in my blood to do that. But the actual real business experience was about 2008, when me and the friends in London started that company, Street Life. I ended up selling my stock in that and moved to Dubai in 2010. So they went on and did amazing things and really successful. And it was amazing watching them grow. So it started then, moved to Dubai. And then when I first moved to Dubai, I was working in real estate, and this was back in 2010 when everybody had a BlackBerry. I don't know if you remember those BlackBerries. And
I wanted to ask you about that story.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of we're kind of there. But it was called BBM was the messaging tool, and in real estate I had loads of people's BBMs, but I didn't have any numbers. So if I wanted to phone them, I couldn't. And then this one day I sat there and I was looking for deals. Didn't earn much money in real estate. I wasn't very good. And I was looking for deals and thought, hang on, if I could update my BBM status with deals, maybe there's a business there. So I'd just be honest, I went to the shop, bought a BlackBerry, put the pin on a business card, went round one evening, JBR, distributed these cards, but in one day we had nearly 5,000 people joining this thing. It blew up. It was also quite risky because we didn't have a trade license or literally anything, and I was like, my gosh, this is phenomenal. So then I decided I'm going to try and raise some money. I was living with a guy at the time, and his cousin Zaid, he's a really good friend of mine. He put me in touch with his cousin and met him for a coffee. We then spoke to somebody else, tried to raise some money, and everything was going really cool. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And then one day we woke up and BlackBerry Messenger had gone down, and it was game over. Like it had gone down for 4 days. One of the servers in Reading blew up or something, and the investors that we were talking to were like, look, this is
not going to work.
This is not going to work. You've got all your eggs in one basket. But off the back of that kind of elevated my career into working for Groupon. The guys at Groupon reached out to me and said, hey, we saw your article. Or did I reach out to them? Anyway, either way, I got the job, which was cool, and then started to really just help Groupon grow. And that was one of the biggest startups I'd ever been in.
But you said now Groupon reached out to you or you reached out to them. It doesn't really matter. I think it actually matters. Because if you reached out to them, but the moral of the story is you are making an action.
I think
like,
if I remember rightly, it was I think once the whole BBM, because I left my job in real estate to focus. I forgot to mention that, but to focus on this BBM idea, and had no money. And I think that I probably started to apply for jobs, but it was the BBM part of it and that article, because it was published in the press, that probably got me the job.
Yeah, but what I want to say is, like, after knowing you for a little while, we had a couple of conversations. The difference between someone just coming up with the ideas and someone actually turning them into a reality is the action. Yeah. And regardless of whether you reached out to Groupon or they reached out to you, you are the one who is actually getting out there and
needed to find some income, and either way, whether or not I do think that I was applying for jobs, and it was a friend who introduced me. But yeah, anyway, so I ended up working for Groupon for 2 years. Yeah. Amazing, honestly, it was such an experience. It was one of the kind of eye-opening experiences of running an e-commerce business in Dubai, which is a digital platform. Dubai was very check orientated and cash only then, and you couldn't pay for things online, and I think there were competitors like Cabone and I can't remember the other names, but it was amazing, and it was, to be honest, working there and meeting the people there that really then gave me the eye-opening, opened my eyes and gave me the confidence to then think, oh, hang on a minute, maybe there's another opportunity. And then really just from working there, we built a product. It was called a social wall or a deal wall. It was called a deal wall, which integrated Facebook and Groupon together. And that allowed you to buy deals directly from Facebook, rather than you saw a Facebook post from Groupon, went to Groupon from Facebook, purchased it. We then asked you to go back to share that purchase and tell people what you'd bought. And that kind of deal wall was awesome. Like, it was really, really cool. And it was off the back of that I decided, right, I'm going to go and try and raise some money, start a company that would do that. It would basically help brands build companies, build integrations onto social media for their companies.
And I think there is a nice backstory about that whole experience. And it's also, well, we are trying to unpack who you really are and what's driving you and what
if
are
you
the
figure
motivations.
out, let me know. I've got no idea. Let me know.
What I'm really curious about is when I meet someone like you, to understand how you became who you are today, which is not just it happened or I was just born like that. Like, it's a set of some events in your life that shaped you, right? And one of the things, and I already said it, it sounds like you're not accepting no as an option or an answer, that something cannot be done. That story about Groupon and Facebook, it's interesting because how it all happened is because Facebook was not providing, or you couldn't do it through Facebook, so you reached out directly to Facebook, and you figure out a way how to actually solve it, right?
It was basically, there were a number of people involved, and we were doing these kind of sessions where we were trying to find ways to grow the sales. And Facebook had not actually got any integration with Groupon. And Groupon's APIs were pretty old school, to be honest, because what had happened is that there was a company that had started My City Deal, and then Groupon bought them. So anybody who was outside of the US reported to this head office in Germany, and the APIs were quite difficult to build things on the platform. So when we were trying to do it, we're like, right, we've got to figure this out. And it was a number of things. It was reaching out to guys at Facebook, it was bringing a team in, it was getting Groupon's approval. So long ago now, I can't remember how it all came about, but it literally ended up with us allowing you to build go onto the product and go onto Facebook and purchase your deal directly from Facebook, and that wasn't done before, and that really just opened a whole new world of opportunity, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
As to what you could do with Facebook APIs and with social APIs and stuff like that.
And then you founded Brndstr. Brndstr grew like crazy. I think you reached at one point some big numbers, right?
We kind of Brndstr, we knocked it out of the park at the beginning. It was really, really awesome. And I think that the reason it was so successful is that the partners and the team that we had were good. I had been at Groupon trying to raise money and realized how difficult it was to raise money. And I then decided that the best thing to do would be to try and do what I did in London, which was have these kind of meetup events, bringing entrepreneurs and investors together. So I reached out to Startup Grind, which is a really phenomenal platform in the States. And they were doing these chapter events. And one of the chapters that I asked them to do was, could I do one in Dubai? And the platform is that you find somebody who's influential, who's been successful, you do a fireside chat with them, you interview them, you try and sell tickets in the room to bring people to the room, and then you put the video online and everybody can see. Well, this was awesome for me because I had Groupon as my distribution platform.
So you were doing the podcast 5 years ago.
So we were doing it as a fireside chat. So it was a bit slightly different. And what my first interview was with the founders of Debizzle, JC and Sim. But the whole idea and the whole reason behind that was that I wanted to try and bring entrepreneurs together to try and find developers, and bring investors together to try and find money. So this event, we did it back in a friend of mine, Laith's place called Make Business Hub. For those of your listeners who've been here a while will know it well. It was a phenomenal place. It was the OG of the urban cafes, and we did it there. We put the tickets on Groupon. We sold them on Groupon. We sold out. Like, we literally sold every single ticket. The room was full. Like, it was packed. Nobody realized, I don't think, what we'd gotten ourselves into. But the amazing thing was that kick-started this kind of wave. And then Laith did an unbelievable job of turning Make into kind of like this hub. And he had loads of different events there every week, and people kept coming. And I think that what that helped me do with Brndstr was actually network and meet people. So when I did eventually find the funding, I think I'd met like 30, 40 people, did find an investor that was willing to put the money in. We then had the energy and that excitement to kind of build this startup. And yeah, Brndstr started in June 2013 was when we actually kicked it off.
And I'm going to park the topic of meeting people for just a bit later, because it's a big topic and it's important one for any entrepreneur or anyone who's trying to build something. But there is also an interesting chapter about, at the end of Brndstr, where the whole thing with Analytica happened, when you had to shut down the business. And you told me, until you actually have to shut down the business, you don't realize that shutting down a business is almost as difficult as starting a business.
Honestly, I mean, there's a number of things about closing down a business that I think I found extremely hard. One is that feeling that you've failed, and also that feeling that you've kind of just let everybody down, but you've tried everything and it's just nothing you could.
In your case, there was really nothing that you could do.
I mean, I always look back and I kind of always check the news and see what's going on, and could there have been something that we had done? Maybe. I think, also if I look back at myself too, maybe, had I been a bit more experienced in being able to identify those things and handle it a bit better, and been a bit more mature in the approaches to certain things. But, it was one of those that I believe just happened for a reason,
Yeah.
and everything happens for a reason. But yeah, when we actually decided that, you know, we're not going to be able to keep this alive and we're not going to be able to survive, and went through the process of closing the company down, man, it was so challenging. It took me nearly a year and a half to close the bank account down. It was madness. Honestly, it was crazy, because you try to close the bank account down, they need you to not have any money in the bank. And even if you have like 1 dirham, you've got money in the bank. So then you can't withdraw 1 dirham out of the bank
Is it
account.
1 or million, right?
It just wouldn't they wouldn't let me close the account down. Honestly, I spent so much time in Emirates MBD. It was madness. But anyway, we got there in the end. We managed to close the company down. And like I say, I think everything happens for a reason, because that's then meant that I've moved on and looked into try and build another business that's, you know, learned from the lessons from before.
So shutting down a business is a big stress, and it's like in anyone's life when they reach that point, it's like serious, right?
Yeah.
What you did, which was for me was like, wow, you packed your suitcases and went to Silicon Valley in like a couple of weeks.
Pretty much. I mean, kind of just to line the dots as to why Silicon Valley became part of the radar for me with being living in Dubai, is that when we were running Brndstr, we were developers for Facebook and Twitter. So it meant that I traveled to the States twice a year, maybe a bit, 2 to 3 times a year, to really go and meet the engineering teams, meet the people, get the access that we needed. I attended these startup grind events that were also there in the States, and that meant that I built a really good network and relationship with people in America, in the Bay Area, and really just thought to myself, well, you know, if we're not going to be able to survive this company here, let's see what we can take from the assets and see what businesses we can, you know, maybe start from relationships we've developed in the US.
At the time, you had a family already. You got your daughter, right?
My daughter Layla, she was born on the 19th of November 2015.
And you went to US at.
So she was, I think. Yeah, she was 2. I mean, I was never away for birthdays or special occasions, but yeah, she was pretty new.
How do you decide for a step like that? I mean, it's big. I mean, you could have easily stayed in Dubai and maybe started the business here, right? You had the network people, have some money, and, you know, how did you decide to go to Silicon Valley?
To be honest with you, I mean, it's the heartbeat of technology, and I think the bit that I've always tried to overcome is when you see things in the news or you read about these hubs in these areas, and you see that these places are popular for a reason. I kind of need to know why. And I think that the problem that I had was that I grew up in London, you know, very fortunate, had a great life, was surrounded by lots of good people, but you were always seeing, you know, when I was really young, people were playing Game Boys and they were watching movies that were from the US, and we were never first. And so I think that, you know, the opportunity that I got to go to the States was to really just go and understand what it was like. You know, the guys that founded Facebook, the guys that founded Twitter, where did they drink coffee? What did they do? Like, what made them that person? So for me, just to go there and just explore, you know, I would just go and walk the streets, look for where offices started. It's quite cool to Google where did Facebook start, where was eBay's first office. I think Facebook's office and eBay's office are the same. They had the same first office. I think it was eBay. I'll have to double check. But you know, there's this circle of people who are all moving around, and a friend of mine, Derek, who owns Startup Grind, his company, his office, I believe, their first office were the same as Robinhood's first offices. And it's so cool to kind of understand that way of life, and by being there gives you that new energy.
And when you're out there, does it feel like it's actually a very small community?
It's like anywhere, really. You know, the more you go, the smaller it feels. I think that, you know, just to be able to, I think for me, a goal is to be able to navigate around a place without using Google Maps. Like there's a company that I use called Turo to hire a car. you basically hire somebody else's car. They put their car on the platform, you can go and hire a car and then drive it. And for me, a goal is to try and just be in a place and, you know, not use Google Maps. I still use Google Maps in Dubai though, because they change the roads. But no, I mean, like if you can kind of navigate your way around, or you know where they do the good coffees, or you know where to go at certain times, or you know where to go and have a drink or some food. So yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of friends there now. You know, I've built a good network of friends and relationships there.
And it's been now 4 or 5 years since you've been around Silicon Valley, right?
My first trip there was 2014, I think.
Oh, really?
For the Startup Grind event. They do a global event every February. There's one just happened recently, so virtual one this time. And every year they do it because we were part of that Startup Grind community. We were obviously invited to go. It's really quite a cool networking event. It's now huge, like I think it's 5,000 or 6,000 entrepreneurs attend. So yeah, 2014, and then every year I went to 1 or 2, 3 times depending on how much work was needed.
So bringing us to the topic that I part for later, how do you meet right people? Relationship building is everything. I mean, it can really, one person can change your life.
Very true.
In every way, emotional, business, I mean, in any way. But it's hard to predict or to orchestrate when are you going to meet that person or how are you going to meet that person and so on. From your story so far, I can see that there is always a mention of 1 or 2 persons that influenced, or you met this one or that one. What's your secret sauce behind it? Like, there's got to be some thinking and process or stuff that you do to meet people at scale, I guess, so that you can actually end up meeting a couple of right ones.
I think from what I've experienced and what I've witnessed is that you tend to meet people who have similar interests to you if you do similar things to them. So for example, one of the parts of the trip that I did is I would go to the same coffee shop every single day. Where I knew that people who were the CEOs of Box.com or were investors who, you know, had their offices around the corner, and I would go in the same coffee shops every single day and just try and get a feeling for, like, how did they, you know, what were they interested in? How did they live their life? Because, you know, did they like golf? Did they like surfing? Did they like black coffee, white coffee? Did they get a croissant? Did they, you know, just, you can kind of paint this profile of a person. But then what's cool is that the more times you go into a coffee shop, you then get to know the owners and the people behind the counters. So then they were like, hey, Simon, would you like the same again? And then the people who you're trying to, you know, speak to recognize that you've now been validated by somebody else. So then if you do send them an email, you can say, hey, you know, I was in the coffee shop this morning. I saw you. Would you like, you know, would you be interested in looking at my pitch deck? And it was more kind of just putting myself into positions of places that I would have something in common with that person, but also had a way to break the ice. And I do believe that, you know, the more you get out there, the more you are likely to meet people. If I never gone to America, you know, saying, had you never left your country to come to Dubai, or I never come to Dubai, we wouldn't be sat here. And, you know, you've got to get out there, put your wings on and just fly to the countries and figure it out, I guess. And then it doesn't feel foreign anymore. It feels quite normal and natural and like home, really.
The message is get out there, like just get out there. And I think a lot of people are overthinking probably the whole process of meeting people. You know, there are some hacks that you can come up with. Like that one is amazing, going to the coffee shop all the time.
I mean, you know, it's again, I think it's, I can't remember the story. I think it was Jack Dorsey when he first met Evan Williams in a coffee shop in South Park. I think it's from the book Things a Little Bird Told Me by Biz Stone. You know, he met Evan in a coffee shop. Well, they were in a coffee shop buying coffee, and they then just started to jam and talk about stuff, and that obviously led to the amazing relationship they developed. And I just think that you've got to try and put yourself in the shoes of the people that you want to be around. Luck has a lot to play. I do believe luck has a lot to play, but I'm a believer that the energies you put into the world, you get those back.
Absolutely.
You know, like if I wake up in a terrible mood,
you can't expect someone hugging you.
Everything goes wrong. You know, like everything goes terribly wrong, or you know, you drive in your car and somebody cuts you up, you get mad at them, and then you're mad at somebody else. Whereas if you just relax and take it easy, it's chilled and nobody really cares.
Law of attraction.
It's the law of attraction. That was a great video. Definitely worth watching. 100%.
Yeah. So there is a great element of your travel to Silicon Valley. You basically, what you did, you spinned out the idea from that you had with Brndstr, prepared the pitch deck and went to Silicon Valley to look for the investment, right?
Yeah, I mean, when we had the company Brndstr, one of the parts that we did was we had this 20% time where 20% of the week we allocated to the engineers to just kind of build stuff. And we were working on this project, which started really as an automated camera app where you would be able to send a tweet to this camera or this camera. It would take a picture and send it back to you. We did that campaign and sold that product to a number of brands and had some really awesome campaigns with people like Nissan and that here in Dubai. And it was just a project. Personally loved the project. We branded it Cheeze, as in say cheese as a camera. Cheese. And there was always something about it that just felt it could be bigger than it was.
Yeah.
And then when things with Brndstr started to not go according to plan, it was one of those things. Well, you know, you can either fold everything or just try and identify something within the business that would work. So I'll be honest, I put the pitch deck together, and you know, one of the trips when I was in America for, I can't remember, it was F8 or one of the events for social media, I ended up just seeing what I could do, pitch people, and I ended up actually going into the Apple store in Palo Alto, the kind of the main one on the High Street, University Avenue, to try and buy some AirPods. So this is how long it was. The very first AirPods, it was 2017, and the guy that served me was actually the manager of the store.
He was serving you.
He was serving me. He was the one that was selling me the AirPods.
Wow.
Out of everybody in the whole store, he was the manager. So we just started to having a conversation.
Was that luck?
I believe so, because I could have been served by anybody, right?
Yeah.
And then he was a Turkish guy. His name's Bahar, really lovely gentleman. And he said, "Oh, you know, like, what are you doing here? Where are you from?" I was telling him about, you know, the fact I was from Dubai, and you know, that's already quite a big deal for people. You know, you're 17-hour flight away, like it's the other side of the world. Like, it's a big deal. So I said to him, you know, what I was working on, and then to be honest with you, we just kept in touch, and then he kind of said to me in one of the conversations, you know, what are you doing? And I said, I'm trying to raise some money for this app. And he goes, well, I don't really know much about applications, and I'm not really sure, you know, where to go, but I do have some friends. I've been here a while, and I know quite a few people. Let me reach out to one of my friends. And the long story short is he asked me to go and meet one of his friends in a coffee shop. And I'm sitting in a coffee shop in Menlo Park called Stacks, and in walks Guy Kawasaki, the famous author who's now a great friend, and he comes and sits on my table and says, "Show me what you've got." So,
and you're like, "Hey, wait a second."
What was so bizarre is that I used Guy's pitch deck advice and his 10 slides to success to raise the money for Brndstr. So it was just a phenomenal, bizarre experience being sat across the table eating pancakes with Guy. But yeah, you know, I mean, from being in the Apple store, and again, I think, you know, we didn't touch upon it before, and people do have reasons, but you know, there's a lot of financial element about this too. I've always put myself out there, and I've spent money out of my own pocket to get myself in those situations. I didn't need AirPods. To be honest, I didn't need headphones. I don't probably need most of the tech that I buy. But, you know, I was in America, in Palo Alto. AirPods had just come out. They were a brand new piece of tech. I thought, I'm going to just see if I can buy them, because there was a waiting list in the UAE. There's a waiting list in the UK. And the guy was just like, look, the guy that was going to buy them didn't turn up. You can have his. So I ended up buying these AirPods. But had I not gone and put myself in the situation to buy them, I would have never met Baha, who would have never introduced me to Guy. And, you know, was it called the butterfly effect or something?
Yeah, definitely. No. when we first talked and you told me this story, I was like, okay, this is now next level. Everything up until that point was like, okay, startup story, okay, respect, you went to Silicon Valley, but then the following chain of events now, which led you where you are today, is like not something that you can hear very often.
No, I do believe that, you know, I mean, honestly, I felt very blessed to have met Guy, and even since the day that we first met, we're great friends and we speak a lot now, and he's definitely helped me personally and in the business too. But what's been funny is just how having somebody that does believe in you, that is credible, gives you that boost of motivation to try and kind of then look and take yourself to another level. So rather than me just, you know, emailing somebody and thinking, oh, are they going to respond, I would then now feel as though I have the ability to email anybody, and I have, and I did. I've emailed anybody who I found interesting, who I felt would be a great addition to my life, either through being a mentor, an investor, or just somebody to have a chat with. I've emailed and I've had replies, and people have come back to me with, you know, tips, tricks, advice, and I think that it's just been my way of working, is just reach out to people that, you know, because they're people at the end of the day, and people reach out to me. You know, I'm not at the same level by any means, but people do reach out to me, and I try and help them and assist them. So yeah, I think, yeah,
you're opening too many subjects. It's hard for me to stay focused.
I talk so much, honestly, like, just tell me to stop talking.
Like, you just casually mentioned a huge topic. You said you reached out mentors, advisors, investors. Like mentors, advisors, investors, each of these three groups, this is a topic for itself to talk about. How do you actually get a mentor? It's not like just you send them an email, or it is.
Well, I mean, I'll give you an example. I was reading the book called This'll Never Work. That'll Never Work by Marc Randolph. And Marc is the co-founder and first CEO of Netflix. And his book talks about how he founded Netflix and the journeys he went through. And I'll be honest, I was hooked on this book. I was going for walks, I was having it in my car. I was just trying to get as much of this book into my mind and listen to it on Audible as much as I could. And at the end of it, I thought to myself, this guy's just, you know, I've learned so much from this 6 or 7 hour audio book. And I looked on the back of the book, there was a website, I went on there, and he just said on his website, you know, email me if you've got any ideas. And I don't know if people do, I'm sure they do, and I just did. And yeah, and then he replied, and we then were talking about what we were working on, about my relationship with Guy. Him and Guy actually live in the same town in Santa Cruz. They're both into surfing, both amazing authors, but I don't think they'd ever met. And Marc asked me if I could introduce him to Guy, and I was like, well,
Marc asked you if you can introduce him to Guy.
Which was again made you realize, well, actually these guys are just genuinely lovely people and want to get an intro into people who they thought. So I just connected the two, and I remember sat there when I pressed send thinking, I have just connected two absolute legends to meet each other. And anyway, so, you know, me and Marc have stayed in touch, and he's become part of the business, and you know, I can reach out to him for advice whenever I need to. And yeah, and it was just literally, I listened to the book, which was interesting to me, sent him an email. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't an overnight thing. This probably took 3 or 4 months for this whole process to take place, because everybody's busy. But eventually, you know, we just and we stay in touch. And I speak to him. I actually spoke to him a couple of weeks ago and just asked for his advice. I said, hey, could I borrow half an hour of your time? And asked for his advice, and that was cool. And it's nice to be able to have those people around you to email and
no, absolutely. And I think your whole life and everything that you did led to you being able to even pitch or present yourself as someone, you know, Dubai, flew to San Francisco, Cheeze, startup, all that sounds, you know, when someone like Marc Randolph reads it, there is some credibility there, right? So it's also, how do you build your story when you're approaching someone like that? If you just approach them, hey man, can I talk to you for 15 minutes?
Yeah, and I think it's like any relationship too. You know, I've got people in my life who I've met and they've become my best friends. I've got people in my life who I've met and they'll become great friends but don't speak to them much. And I've got people in my life who I've met and I don't speak to anymore. And there's a saying, people come into your life for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. And you know, anybody you meet will fall into one of those three categories. My best friends.
What were the three categories?
A season, a reason, or a lifetime. My best friends from uni, speak to them. I mean, I went to uni many years ago, 20 years ago now probably, and you know, I speak to them all the time. We're in a WhatsApp group, and they're my best friends. And I've got people who I've worked with who have stayed in touch, and I'm really good friends with them. And I've got people I work with, and I haven't spoken to them since. And you know, they're for a reason. Some people are for a season. It might be for a period of a year, 2, 10, whatever. Or people are a lifetime. And I think that if you can get the small few into that lifetime sector, those are the people who stay in your life and, you know, will be there forever through whatever you need them to be for. So
That's beautiful. You met a lot of investors. You said it over the call like 200, 300 times. You got no.
I mean, so we started to raise funding last year in that we opened our seed round and we're raising money.
That was for Cheeze.
Yeah.
And before that, there was Brndstr.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's always been fundraising. And I think, you know, even I read Zomato just raised $200 million.
Wow.
You know, people are constantly raising money and you need to raise money to keep things alive. And so, yeah, when it came to last year, normally I would jump on a plane and fly to meet investors and speak to people, but that obviously got taken away and couldn't. So I reckon I probably sent 200 plus emails over the course of last year to reach out to investors because people were no longer investing as well. Their appetites were changing and stuff. So yeah, it's very difficult when you're constantly being said no and oh, it's not for me or it's not for you. But what that does, and that's really why we are where we are in the company. Like I said, we started the business a couple of years ago. And we launched with Privy Chat, which was a chat-based application for private communities. It's designed to be like a WhatsApp group with organization. After the research we did, we thought that was an unbelievable product and an unbelievable direction. And that's something that we have been doubling down on for the last few years. But when you're trying to raise money and you're not getting that bite that you need, you have to evaluate things and say, well, what's going on? You know, why am I not getting the investments that I need? And I think the truth is that last year there was a spike in chat applications because it became the tool that everybody needed. So we looked at the data, we looked at what was being used in the application and saw that photographs were being sent and organized quite a lot in the application. And you know, our DNA and our background is photography. So we decided to really explore within the application what we can do. I started to reach out to people, got some advisors and some people to join me and help me in the photography space, some professionals, and we've been since December last year just really looking into the photography space. So Privy exists, it's still in the App Store, it will continue to be in the App Store, and we'll roll out a sister application called Cheeze in Q1 this year, and that's all come about through me getting no's in investors' emails saying no. Had I got yes, we wouldn't be exploring this sister application. So
yeah,
everything happens for a reason. And I think it was this guy, Peter Jones, an investor in the UK, said, failure is only feedback. So like if you never fail, it's just feedback, you know,
which is true, yeah.
You know, whatever it might be.
Well, yeah, I mean, and obviously you can't expect that you're going to raise funds after 3, tries.
No.
We spoke about one interesting moment of pitching, and it's how you look, how you behave. A lot of people tend to dress up for going out there and raising funds. Like, what's your experience with that whole
I think it's about, for me, it's about being comfortable really, and just being, for example, like if you wouldn't wear a suit to the beach, right? I mean, some people might do, I don't know.
Maybe.
Or you wouldn't wear, apart from the famous story of where Mark Zuckerberg wore flip-flops in his dressing gown to that pitch meeting, but you would gauge the scenario, right? And I think that just having that appearance and first impressions count, whether it be through when you're going with dating people or investors or whatever. It's a very, very important matter. So one thing I did over lockdown is I actually kind of geeked out and tried to get microphones and lighting, and because I couldn't, and I'll be honest, it's great with work, but when I Zoom call my friends, they laugh. They're like, why do you, everybody laughs at my microphone, but it stands out and the quality is awesome. So I stand by it.
No, of course, they remember you. It doesn't matter, but
Yeah,
but they remember.
I might
you.
be the nerd with the microphone, but hey, you know, it doesn't matter. They remember me, so I can at least put in the email. Hey, I'm the nerd with the microphone. Do you want to invest?
Exactly.
So yeah, you know, I mean, it's an icebreaker and a way to stand out, I suppose.
Yeah. All right. Bringing in a bit of Dubai in perspective, because obviously the whole show is focused on this region.
Yeah.
You are having an awesome journey in US, but you're still based here. I can't even catch the number of flights you had. Like, you've been living on the plane almost for a while. You've been around the world.
A lot of flights.
When you compare different parts of the world and different ecosystems, which one do you think is the best for starting a business and startups today?
I think if you look at today, how the world is now, the world is really kind of one, because everybody's on Zoom or online. For me personally, I love Dubai. I've been here now 10 years. My daughter's here. She goes to school here. This is her home, and this is home for me. But Dubai for me has so much opportunity, so much so actually that we, during our fundraise, partnered with a local entrepreneur here, property developer, and we're going to be setting up our engineering hub here in Dubai. We're going to be focusing on the region, bringing the engineering abilities to Dubai, and we could have gone and set this up anywhere, but I'm really excited that Dubai is going to be our hub for engineers, because it's so central to the world too, in that we can speak to people in Australia, we can speak to people in America, we can speak to people in London, we can speak to people all around the world in a 24-hour period. So if we do have engineers who are based here and the core team is here, and we do need to kind of subcontract out to Australia or subcontract out to LA, we can do. So yeah, I believe Dubai, if I'm totally honest, has got a huge setup dedicated to entrepreneurs, and I think the way they dealt with the pandemic of helping entrepreneurs with trade licenses and these new work from home visas was phenomenal. And and I tell a lot of my friends, I'm here and I will continue to be here. If I can still fly to the States, I will. I think it's important to see the people, but yeah, we're going to have our engineering hub here. The company's still going to be a US based company, but we're going to have our engineering team here.
Do you think that you would be where you are today, not only business and career wise, mind wise, if you hadn't traveled so much?
No.
You've been around the world, right?
I would nowhere, no, not at all. I would say that without being able to get on a plane and explore the walks of life from, say, Palo Alto and the Bay Area, from Santa Monica and LA, from being at home in London, being here. I did a talk in Sydney and Melbourne 2 years ago for Startup Grind. I'd never been there. I don't know if you've ever seen the TV show Neighbours. It was a TV show that I grew up with most of my life. I had to go to Ramsey Street and get this plaque saying I'd been to Ramsey Street. Like it's kind of like a bucket list thing to do. But had I not travelled, no, my outlook would be a lot smaller, I think.
Yeah. I
would feel intimidated by the bigger companies and be like, wow, why are they doing it and why I'm not? So I would say no, not at all. I need travel. I'm here because of travel, for sure.
Yeah. You've been around a lot of places. You spend a lot of time in Silicon Valley. But when I ask you to compare Silicon Valley and Dubai, it can't be compared. None of these big hubs can be compared, really. They're all different. But I ask you, where do you think it's easier to plug in, meet people, network, connect, grow eventually and build? Silicon Valley or Dubai?
I would say the degrees of separation in Dubai are a lot smaller. So I would say that Dubai, I mean, it's changed over the years, but I remember when I first came here, you could literally ask any expat for help and they would help you, and they'd still do. It's just there's a lot more expats now. But I remember starting Brndstr, I would put an email out or a message on LinkedIn and said, hey, does anybody know people in this brand or this company? And then within 2 or 3 separation or points, you got introduced to those people. Meeting people in America, again, I think if you're there long enough and you go and meet people in the right places, it's about building a network. And I would say they're very different. I would find it hard to compare because I've not lived there. I've only kind of dipped my toe in the water. So I think it's the same rule of thumb. Surround yourself with good people who are similar interests to you, and you'll be able to, again, if you can't find the people that you need, you're either in the wrong industry or your approach is wrong, so you're going to have to change it. But you can always reach out to anybody you want to, I think.
No, definitely. And the challenge that we have at the moment is that we are going virtual, and that is reducing the number of actually people that we can meet. So we need to work, like, what's the workaround for you?
Well, I mean, one of the big things for me has been about getting a good first impression set up when I do a Zoom call. I'll be honest, it's I mean, it's so funny because when I speak to Guy or speak to Mark, we do have a 10 or 15 minute chat about the lenses, the cameras, and and there's this thing called a bokeh, which is the blur in the background. So how do you get the best bokeh? How do you get the best blur? And it's a kind of a nerdy thing to say, and my friends do laugh. But I think for me, it's important to have that first impression. Having different email tactics of speaking to people. I think Clubhouse, this application that's blowing up, is phenomenal to meet people. I've joined a couple of talks and they call you up on stage, and I've asked a couple of questions, and then because you're in that room and you've actually paid attention to what they're saying, and you're giving the hosts, the moderators, time, and you're supporting them, you can then reach out to them and email them and then say, hey, I was the guy that was in the room, would you mind just having a look at my pitch deck, or would you mind being able to help me introduce you? So I think it's, you've got to stand out, you've got to approach things from a different way, and just, if people ignore you or say no, don't take that as a negative. Maybe they were too busy, maybe they never saw it. So I think you've got to, if that person or that partner is right for you, and if they're worth pursuing, you'll pursue it to see, and until they say no.
Yeah.
And if they say no, then just respect the decision and kind of move on.
I hope that you're taking notes.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So to wrap up, Cheeze, plans for the future now, what's coming?
So we've got some quite exciting iterations to Privy Chat that are going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And we're rolling out our new photo application called Cheeze. If you go onto cheeze.com, you can sign up for the beta version. We've got a wait list now there. And like I say, we've got a really, really interesting roadmap for that, where we're going to be allowing people to mint and manage their photos into NFTs on the blockchain. It's one of those areas that is so unknown and so interesting. People are talking about them. There's so many different observations and opinions around this. So yeah, Cheeze will be available to help you manage your photos, mint them, put them onto the blockchain, sell them, and we'll just keep moving fast and breaking things until we find that rocket ship, I guess.
Awesome, man. Well, look, I hope that this episode is going to help Cheeze at least a bit.
I hope so too. If not, if it doesn't, it's been a pleasure talking to you anyway.
Nah, absolutely. I enjoyed every second of it. We had the intro call. I hope that we're going to continue talking a lot more.
Definitely.
I think that there is so many things to pick your brain on that it's unbelievable. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's never. I'm not necessarily right, but I can always give you an input or a story. That's for sure.
You know what? Like what we are trying to. Our promise for the change officer is that we promise at least one epiphany moment per episode. And like that's coming from my thinking about books, podcasts, movies. If I got at least one for these like 90 minutes or 45 minutes or a couple of hours that I invested in the book, if I got at least one, I'm happy.
Yeah.
So I hope that you guys got at least one epiphany moment for this episode, and that you picked up some good thoughts, insights, inspirations. We are here to answer any questions that you have. Simon is happy to share with you more.
Whatever you need to know. Like I say, I can help in any way possible. And I just think, anybody who is in the entrepreneur space, just keep going. I'm by no means, a successful entrepreneur. There's people a lot more successful than me, but just keep going, never give up. And if somebody says no, just try another approach.
Awesome. I think this is a good message to wrap up. Thanks for staying with us until the end. If you like what we're doing here with the Change Officer podcast, please subscribe and like. Leave any comments that you have. We are going to make sure to reply, and stay tuned until the next episode coming out next Monday. Simon, thanks a lot, man.
Thank you, man. Cheers. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.